Welcome once again to a slightly delayed but live and no boomer moment recording in progress.
Oh, I
We
messed things
almost
up. We got to start all over again. I'm just kidding.
so we're starting with a little bit of a risque story that we could do because we're not currently monetized. We just need to get more people watching to get us monetized. So we might want to talk about some brilliant stories here, like Mike Tyson used a fake penis during his boxing career.
Wait, what?
He used a fake penis. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Larry, what does a fake penis have to do with boxing? I'll explain that to you. Former heavyweight champion Mike Tyson had a peculiar way to avoid detection from things he used to partake in during his heyday in boxing. In 2013, Mike Tyson revealed in his autobiography, Undisputed Truth, that he used a fake penis filled with somebody else's urine to beat drug tests administered to him during his boxing career. Tyson admitted in the book he was using drugs such as cocaine before, after, and sometimes during fights. He had to do something to avoid getting caught.
Oh, is that why he bit off ears? He was just all coked
I
out.
mean, that could very well be what caused that. Tyson explained in this book that he would often take drugs before a fight and then fill a fake penis with somebody else's urine to escape detection. One of his entourage would carry it, which he would call his whizzer, then hand it to Tyson after the fight. So how much money would you have to be paid to hold a fake penis full of somebody else's urine, Jim?
Quite a bit, and I'm pretty sure he had the wallet to do it.
Yes, he did back in the day.
And I'm pretty sure whoever was charging him was charging a whole lot more than what I would.
Tyson also revealed that he was on cocaine when he lost to Danny Williams in 2004, and said he was on drugs that time he lashed out at Lennox Lewis at the press conference for their 2002 super fight.
By the way, that is a job pitch. By the way, if there's any boxers that want me to hold their fake penis for money, I'll probably undercut the competition. and I live locally here in Vegas. I'm not going to be cheap, but I'll be cheaper. Hey, man, times are tough with these fucking pandemics, right?
I was a full-blown cokehead, Tyson said, while revealing he first took cocaine when he was 11. The history of war is the history of drugs. Every great general and warrior from the beginning of time was high. Probably not. But, Mike Tyson's not necessarily made for strong assessments. Eventually, it would catch up to him when he got caught in 2000 after testing positive for marijuana and fined $200,000 after his fight against Andrew Galata. Tyson destroyed Galata in the match in just 2 rounds. Imagine beating the snot out of somebody while you're high on weed. The bout was later overturned to a no contest because of Tyson's failed drug test. Tyson said he was high before taking to the ring for a match against Lou Service in Glasgow in June 2000, and came up with an ingenious method to prevent detection by the sport's official testers. Confessing he had taken blow and pot before the bout, he said, "I had to use my whizzer, which was a fake penis where you put in someone's clean urine to pass your drug test." He blamed a $200,000 fine for testing positive for marijuana after a 2000 fight against Andrew Galata in Detroit on the fact that he was tested before having a chance to get the whizzer from a member of his team who he claims typically carried the device from fight to fight.
Okay. I thought he was just, like packing a sock,
Mm-hmm.
to make the girls backstage go, we better stand in line.
Yep.
Yeah.
So next up, we have a bit of sad news. Former Leave It to Beaver star, known for playing Eddie Haskell, Ken Osmond, has passed away. Come on, give me my link to pop up. Yeah, here we go. Osmond, best known for his role as the troublemaker Eddie Haskell on the television comedy Leave It to Beaver, died Monday morning. So, Jim, you and I are both of the generation that we kind of watch Leave It to Beaver on like Nick at Night and things like that.
Not really.
And it was on the Disney. It was on the Disney Channel at one point.
Yeah.
Or no, it was the remake when everybody was an adult that was on the Disney Channel at one point. So, what's your connection to Eddie Haskell?
Not much. I never watched Leave It to Beaver. I used to watch all of those shows that were on Nick at Night. But Leave It to Beaver was not one of those ones that I remember being on. So I remember watching Mary Tyler Moore. I remember watching. I didn't even see Taxi on there. And if I had seen Taxi, Man on the Moon would have made sense to me.
Yeah. So Ken
when I first
Osmond,
watched
best
it,
known.
now it makes sense to me, obviously. But but when I first watched
But
it, I thought it was supposed to be a comedy movie. I didn't realize that he was a real person. But yeah, Leave It to Beaver was not one of them. It wasn't
okay,
until later.
but you at least know the cultural significance of Eddie Haskell.
Right. Yeah, it's also probably this and My Three Sons were probably like the reason that a lot of people have like this fake nostalgia for a time that didn't exist, which was the 1950s, where everything was happy-go-lucky and all the families were together and happy. That never happened. That was not a real thing.
But a lot of those people in the 50s felt better when they saw the people on TV who were able to get their lives together.
Right.
So Ken Osmond, best known for his role as the troublemaker Eddie Haskell on the television comedy Leave It to Beaver, died Monday morning. His manager confirmed to NBC News he was 76. Cause of death is unknown. Although at 76, for some people, that's just when you die from being old.
Mm-hmm.
Osmond, a native of Glendale, California, began his career as a child actor, with his first speaking part at age 9 in the film So Big, starring Jane Wyman and Sterling Hayden, followed by Good Morning, Miss Dove and Everything But the Truth. He also guest starred on television series including Lassie, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, Wagon Train Fury, and The Loretta Young Show. In 1957, Osmond auditioned for the Eddie Haskell role, which was originally intended to be a guest appearance, but those involved with the show were so impressed with Osmond's portrayal that the character became a key component of the series throughout its 6-season run of 234 episodes, which is a freaking lot of episodes back in the day.
Bulk of the series, dude.
Osmond portrayed Haskell as a sycophant to grown-ups while making fun of them behind their backs, which prepared everybody for working with Eddie Haskell in their office. He was a high school friend of Wally Cleaver, the older brother of Theodore, the Beaver Cleaver, which in the 80s and 90s became an unfortunate nickname, and constantly trying to get his friends in activities that would get them into trouble. During the final years of the show, Osmond was in the U.S. Army Reserves. When the series ended, Osmond continued working as an actor, appearing in Petticoat Junction, The Munsters, a return appearance on Lassie. He was cast in feature films Come On, Let's Live a Little, and with U6 You Get Egg Roll, but he found himself typecast as Eddie Haskell. Osmond joined the Los Angeles Police Department in 1970 and grew a mustache to help secure his anonymity, because in 1970 a mustache was a good way to do that. In 1980, Osmond was struck by 5 bullets while in a foot chase with a suspected car thief and was protected from 4 bullets by his bullet-resistant vest, with the fifth bullet ricocheting off his belt buckle. That is awesome. Osmond was placed on disability and eventually retired from the force in 1988. Osmond filed a class action suit in 2007 against the Screen Actors Guild, asserting that SAG had overstepped its authority in collecting foreign royalties without disclosing the collection agreement until he and Jack Klugman threatened to file suit. The action was settled in 2010. Osmond's manager provided the following statement from his son Eric Osmond to NBC News. He was an incredibly kind and wonderful father. He had his family gather around him when he passed. He was loved and very missed.
However, I do remember his appearance on Penn and Teller's Bullshit, which was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Where they did an episode about nostalgia, and he was on there to be like, yeah, Leave It to Beaver, America never existed. It was a great show.
I mean,
glad everyone liked it.
So speaking of 50s nostalgia, one of those cases where we come up with 2 story topics that fit perfectly together. Do you remember Back to the Future Part 2?
Yeah. And I'm sorry. I hate to. I'm sorry. I know everybody disagrees with me on this. It's actually my favorite of the 3.
I actually like it better myself as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because there's more going on in the plot of Part 2.
Yeah.
And I mean, really,
and the futuristic stuff was really cool, especially when it came out. I was like, "Oh, that's what 2015 is going to be like." I can't wait.
And then later, oh no,
no pizza rehydrator.
So Netflix has Back to the Future Part 2, and it removed the girly magazine that was in the original sequence instead of the sports almanac for the future, because you have Marty. He goes to get the sports
Well, hey,
almanac.
we can just watch it.
Yeah.
We can watch the original. So here's the original. I'll let you know when it's over.
No.
Ooh la la.
Ooh la la. Ooh la la. Ooh la
Yeah.
la.
So that's the clip, and then we're gonna watch the new version, which was edited perfectly.
Totally perfectly. It's a total professional edit.
Yeah.
Tip top.
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Oh yeah,
Ooh
that
la
was a
la.
nice little. Yeah, that was that's a mistake. That's a nice little jump cut right there. Little flash of
Yeah, it
the
is.
magazine real quick before it goes into the part where they really wanted to go to. And not a good look, guys. Not a good look.
So the director is raising heck with Netflix over that, and raising heck with the studio over that as well.
Good.
So what do you think about Netflix editing out a lewd magazine? Not even a pornographic magazine, a lewd magazine.
They have like somewhat softcore stuff on there.
Because of the PG rating, I guess they wanted to be consistent with the current standards for a PG rating.
So is that what we're gonna do now? We're just gonna go back and edit movies that don't fit the current
Do you
MPAA
remember?
ratings?
Do you remember when we were all back in the day when people were pissed off at Ted Turner for colorizing movies? He didn't change what the movies were. He just added color to them.
Yeah, see,
Now
I didn't mind it because I was a kid and I was one of those kids that are like, black and white. But now I'm matured. Ever since I watched Clerks, I was like, no, I get black and white now. But I remember being a kid and going like, yeah, and I remember like everyone hating it, and I'm like, why would you? It's color. Why would you? Huh? And then you look back and you actually watch things like It's a Wonderful Life, and then you watch it in color and you go, oh,
It is not as good in color.
No, it's not.
For certain things, black and white is better.
Mm-hmm.
And
but I remember all of going back and watching some of those 80s movies that I watched when I was a kid. A lot of those were really creepy. That would never get released today. But I don't see them editing those movies because basically it would just be like a 30-second thing because you have to edit the whole movie out.
Yeah. Now, speaking about editing, Aniplex inserts the terms woke, virtue signaling, and politically correct into Bokutachi wa Benkyo ga Dikinai in localization process.
Can we get that, but in American this time?
Let me see what the American is for that.
Speak American.
Because I'm not familiar with this anime. I'm not familiar with that, but we never learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an ironic naming given that conversation we had there, because he said we never learned. I thought you were just making an America joke, but no, that was seamless.
Yeah.
In what has sadly become an increasingly growing trend for anime production company Aniplex, has once again altered dialogue during their localization of an anime series, this time injecting terms with strong socio-political associations into the subtitles of We Never Learn. While the episode was produced and released, because I know you would probably say something like "Speak American" again.
Speak American.
While the episode was produced and released several months ago, the changes were only recently brought to the attention by anime YouTuber Apocalypse Industries on May 13th, with Apocalypse Industries saying this is not okay. And you don't have to be PC about it. Let's see what this other one is here. Here we go. And one more say, "Oh, quit virtue signaling. From today, I want to be called woke gambler Ogata." Don't all those things sound terrible and stupid?
Is it making fun of it? It seems like it's making fun of it.
3 examples presented by Apocalypse Industry were further outlined by anime news outlet Senkaku Complex, which compared the subtitles against the series' original Japanese voice track. The first scene Naruyuki is attempting to put Asami at ease, encouraging her not to worry about her words after she almost calls his family poor. In Funimation's subtitles, Naruyuki instead asks Asumi to not be so PC about it. So, no. In the original, there were no references to the term politically correct, with Naruyuki simply waving off Asumi's accidental embarrassment. The second example sees Naruyuki attempt to compliment Furuhashi by telling her that the small ones, a double joke referencing both her breasts and her physical size, are cute, only to be met with Furuhashi yelling at him to quit the virtue signaling. According to the original Japanese voice act, Furuhashi uses the word
Where's Shiny when you
otamegokashi,
need
or
her?
Look, I haven't had to use my Japanese skills in a while, okay?
All right.
Or self-aggrandizement under pretense of aiding another. I mean, that one we could at least say that's sorta like virtue signaling. In her exclamation, while conceptually similar to virtue signaling, the latter carries a politically charged connotation within Western discourse. And the original for the gambler refers to Ogata, in fact, referring to herself as Kakushi Shubushi Ogata. Kakushi is used to refer to awakening and power, while woke seems to be from the same etymological order as awakening, is yet another term that currently carries a dramatically different meaning in Western context. YouTuber Hero High commented on the changes, saying, apparently you have someone working on your subtitles who is trying to steer you down the wrong direction. He adds that it's unfortunate that Aniplex apparently has some translators that like to abuse their power, not just because they abuse the trust they place in them, trust from the Japanese companies, because they are working with these companies, these license companies, because they want it to be done properly, I assume. So what do you think about weirdos in the translation business messing around with anime shows to make it sound more current era?
I kind of want to get more information before I make a decision because I don't know what's going on just yet. And it seems as though that could be anything. I don't know.
It's a trend for these companies that all happen to be owned by Sony.
Okay.
Basically, Sony's hired a bunch of these weirdos.
Were they the same weirdos that worked on Ghostbusters 2016?
They were not, but they were the weirdos who made bright lights and shiny things appear to block panties and swimsuits in video games.
Okay.
Speaking of weirdos, do you remember the Batwoman show that was terrible?
I remember hearing about it. I don't think anyone watched it.
I did, and I talked about the first episode that was terrible and unlikable.
Well, we're a different bunch. I'm talking about like real people,
No,
not people
like
who watch
people
review this crap just to laugh at it.
Or people who say, man, I want to watch a terrible TV show that makes lesbians look horrible.
Yeah.
Most people saw this and said, this does not look good. And you know who else is saying this does not look good right now? Ruby Rose, the titular Batwoman. She exits the CW's Batwoman. Batwoman actress Ruby Rose has officially exited the CW show. Rose stated, I have made the very difficult decision to not return to Batwoman next season. She added, this was not a decision I made lightly, as I have the utmost respect for the cast, crew, and everyone involved with the show in both Vancouver and Los Angeles. Her statement continues, I am beyond appreciative to Greg Berlanti, Sarah Schechter, and Carolyn Dries for not only giving me the incredible opportunity, by the way, this was her second acting gig, but for welcoming me into the DC universe that they have so beautifully created. She added, thank you, Peter Roth and Mark Pedowitz and the team at Warner Brothers and the CW who put so much into the show and always believed in me. Thank you to everyone who made season 1 a success. I am truly grateful.
I can't put enough quotation marks around the word success, so I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, it had terrible ratings.
Yeah.
While Rose will not be returning Berlanti Productions, the CW's Warner Brothers Television released a statement noting that they will recast the role of Batwoman. They specifically note they will be looking for a member of the LGBTQ community to take the role. The statement reads as follows. Warner Brothers Television, the CW, and Berlanti Productions thank Ruby Rose for her contributions to the success of our first season and wish her all the best.
I can't put enough quotation marks around the word success, so I'm not even going to try.
But you notice there that they seem a lot more less enthusiastic about saying, we're sorry to see you go. By saying, oh yeah, we're going to hire somebody new right away.
Yeah.
In fact, it continues, the studio networks are firmly committed to Batwoman's second season and long-term future, and we, along with the show's talented creative team, look forward to sharing its new direction, including the casting of a new lead actress and member of the LGBTQ community in the coming months. So, do you think that this was a, golly gee willikers, it's a shame you have to go moment, or I have to go, good, don't come back?
Yeah.
Rose did face backlash following her initial casting. It would lead her to quit Twitter. However, she remained active on Instagram. Her exit comes as the show experiences flagging ratings for the network. In its first season, the show premiered with 1.86 million people tuning in and a 0.47 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic. It would fall to a season low of 634,000 viewers in its 17th episode, according to TV series finale. Its lowest ratings came with episode 11 at 0.15. The show would marginally recover by its season finale. It finished with 739,000 views and a 0.20 rating. Despite the declining ratings towards the end of the season, the show still ranks as the fourth best show on the CW, which is not a sterling thing for the CW. It has an average rating of 0.26 with an average viewership of 995,000. Deadline believes Rose is not exiting due to an onset injury that nearly left her paralyzed. It also left a person working on the set paralyzed. No specifics on why she is leaving the show were revealed. Batwoman was renewed for a second season in early January. So what do you think about Ruby Rose not being on a terrible TV show?
Good for her. I'm glad she's going to go find meaningful work. By the way, this next story, actually I think this is a good cast replacement, by the way. And can I explain why? Can I explain why?
Well, let me
read it, and then let me explain why.
Breaking news: Amber Heard is in talks to replace Ruby Rose as Batwoman following the star's exit from the series.
I think that's fantastic because we already know and we can believe that she could beat the shit out of a guy.
I mean, they've talked about making Johnny Depp the Joker. That could be some marriage therapy right there. Have Johnny Depp be the Joker or the Riddler for the show. I'm sure that would work out great.
He's got the face for it.
Oof. So, I know you're not as into Tyler Perry as I am.
To say the least.
But Tyler Perry, who has a very big production footprint in Atlanta, reveals details of COVID-19 production protocols. So Medea is ready to deal with the COVID-19. In a 30-page document titled Camp Quarantine, the creator lays out his plans to start filming again in July at his own Atlanta-based studios. On Wednesday, Tyler Perry sent out a 30-page document to his cast outlining in great detail how he plans to safely start production up again at his Atlanta studio in July amid the COVID-19 outbreak. The lengthy covenant... Really? Really, you want to call it a covenant? that is a very strange choice, Hollywood Reporter. It's titled Camp Quarantine. As Perry has said, the
confirmed,
cast...
right?
Yes. Said that the cast and crew of the TV show series Sistas and The Oval will all stay on his sprawling Tyler Perry Studios campus in Georgia for the duration of the filming in an effort to protect against contracting the novel coronavirus, aka delicious Negra Modelo. The document reveals the specific steps each individual will need to take to protect against the spread of the virus as they get back to work, something Perry has been leading the charge on. So this does sound like a covenant community. First, the cast will be tested using a nasal swab method, 97% accuracy, in their hometown 16 days before travel, and then self-isolate for the remaining time before the travel date. They will then take private flights arranged by Perry to Atlanta, where the cast members will then be tested again from a car using a 15-minute rapid test by Abbott Labs, an 85% accuracy. Both the car drivers and the talent will wear face masks the entire time, and luggage will be sanitized before loading. Upon arriving in Atlanta, the cast will await shuttles that typically seat 25 people, but in an effort to keep people socially distanced, will only carry 10 individuals at a time. Once they make it to the studios, the cast members will be retested using the nasal swab method, with crew members going through the same process. The testing will be administered by licensed medical staff provided by Emory Healthcare. Cast and crew will be sequestered in their individual rooms until the test results come in, which will take approximately 4 to 6 hours. Anyone with a negative test result will not be allowed to leave their housing quarters until all cast and crew results have been confirmed. Once that happens and only those who tested negative are left, everyone will be able to venture outside their private rooms. For anyone who tests positive, strict guidelines will be followed in order to get that person medical attention and remove that person from the campus immediately. Once inside the quarantine bubble, participants are not permitted to leave for the entire 14-day period. Reads the document. Face masks and social distancing will be required at all times, with exception only for actors during filmmaking and during hair and makeup as necessary. Cast and crew will undergo additional PCR rapid testing 4 days from their check-in date to ensure that the negative results that were previously reported. Exit testing via nasal swab will also be required upon an individual's completion of a shoot. The extensive document included below goes into greater detail about each of these steps and also delves into specifics about the thorough on-set cleaning process, reimagined craft services, and much more. Perry kicked off the PDF with a letter to his cast that acknowledges that the passing of crew member Charles Gregory Ross, who became sick with COVID-19 a few days after production wrapped and died a few weeks later, as well as the disproportionate impact the virus has had on the African American community. So what do you think about Tyler Perry versus the COVID-19 virus?
I really want to see the Medea movie with about COVID-19.
I mean, I think they're going to wait before they do a COVID-19 thing. But I mean, Tyler Perry is a small timer in the production team. Admittedly, he does have a name and he's done a lot of movies, does a couple of TV shows. Let's hear about what the bigger boys are dealing with. Productions need insurance to start rolling, but actuaries don't want to take the risk. The entertainment business does want to work without insurance, and right now the insurance industry is getting crushed. That poses a tremendous obstacle to restart filming and TV production. If insurers aren't willing to sell policies, then cameras won't roll. This is a giant problem, says Gene Prewitt, CEO of the Independent Film and Television Alliance. First, good news. Costs incurred by the production shutdown should be covered up to a point. Under various industry standard insurance policies, none of those policies has a specific exclusion for pandemics. But that's bad news for the insurance carriers who will have to pay those claims. Imagine being an insurance company and having to do your job.
I know, right?
In the movie industry, there's probably $300 million to $500 million in claims because of coronavirus, says Bob Jelen, managing director of the entertainment practice at Hub International, a major insurance broker. Brian Kingman, managing director of the entertainment practice at Arthur J. Gallagher, pegged the number even higher at $500 million to $1 billion. Insurance carriers have already decided that they will not cover pandemic-related losses on any new policies. That means producers will either have to take the risk themselves or stay idle. You know, if only you guys sold pandemic insurance. Oh wait, you do! You do sell pandemic insurance, so why wouldn't you sell it now? Oh, that's right, because you would actually have to pay. It's going to be very difficult if you're in the motion picture business to figure out what to do, said Kirk Pasich, an attorney who handles insurance disputes. The larger studios, the Disneys and Netflixes, at least have the capacity to assume the risk of a coronavirus shutdown. They'd prefer to buy insurance, but in many cases, these streamers and big media conglomerates are bigger than the insurance company, as Kingman said. They can make whatever they want, whenever they want. But smaller studios and independent productions will be in a quandary, like Tyler Perry, for example. Independent films are typically financed in large part by completion bonds, which depend on insurance. If you're not fully covered, you're going to have difficulty getting bonded and difficulty getting it financed. Several independent producers contacted by Variety said they are still trying to sort this out. There is some optimism that small firms will be seen as safer than massive productions, but it's also quite possible that studio films will be getting produced while independent films will not. It's sad when certain movies might not be made, Kingman said. That independent producer that's always been such a unique and creative force in the industry needs some help in order to survive. Some in the industry are looking to the federal government to step in and provide a backstop. The government could create a reinsurance pool that would allow carriers to cover pandemic losses, as was done with terrorism-related risks after 9/11. Again, imagine being an insurance company and having to do your job and pay out of your own money. as opposed to having the
Shaking my
government
head.
give you money. But anything that looks like a bailout for movie producers could be politically toxic. We'll see which way the politics land, Pasich says. In the meantime, no one is eager to accept the risk of restarting production. The future of movie making is being challenged, Dylan said. We're trying to figure out what are the alternative ways to cover the risk. That's what we're exploring. So, Jim, what do you think about all these poor insurance companies who are going to be asked to pay out money?
Shaking my head. I mean, we all know that we buy insurance so that, we never have to use it. And we never use it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That we give hundreds of dollars every week to the insurance companies
Yeah.
for no reason.
Right. Wait, are they supposed to do something?
Yeah, they are.
Oh.
So we were going to go into more detail about this story, but I decided that this is the safest version of the story. So, Jim, do you remember a video game called The Last of Us?
No.
Well, it's a zombie horror survival game that featured a man and a young girl, and surviving a zombie apocalypse. The young girl had the immunity to the zombies, and the only thing that was really different was the zombies were actually a fungus that grew into dead bodies and took control of them. It's based off of ones that actually manipulate ants and some bugs. So that was kind of cool. So they made a new version of the game, and there's all sorts of leaked footage, and anybody who talks about the leaked footage has gotten copyright struck and false DMCA claimed, including, it turns out, journalists. Ian Miles Chung posted to Twitter that Naughty Dog just DMCA'd me for reporting as a journalist on how they are DMCAing memes about The Last of Us 2. So, Jim, you were studying intellectual property for a video recently.
Hold on, just a second. So, yeah, Last of Us. Now I remember. The only reason why I know of this game is because I don't know if you're familiar with a. Do you remember ZDTV that turned into Net? No, what is it? Tech TV later on.
Yeah.
So there was there was a video game show on there, and there was like a blonde, spiky haired dude that used to be on that show. Do you remember his name? You know who I'm talking about. He still does game journalism and stuff, but he did a review of it, and it was like one of the most pretentious reviews that I've ever heard in my entire life. And it was almost like an English major doing a video game review. It was that fucking terrible. That's the only reason why I knew of that game. So every time people were talking about Last of Us, I'm like, why is Last of Us 2? Oh yeah, that pretentious review that I saw. That's my only real connection to it. So it's always a bit of a trying to remember what that is. Which, by the way, he gave that game high marks. Everyone I know who's played that game did not. And it doesn't look like this game is going to be any better, considering some of the things I've heard about it.
Yes, things that we're not going to talk about because we don't want to risk getting copyright struck by a dubious company in the United Kingdom. And there are several people who are going to be suing that company if they don't drop all claims in June when the game comes out. Because, of course, people are going to totally stop complaining once the game comes out.
Mm-hmm. Obviously. So, yeah. What were you going to ask about the DMCA?
Well, I mean, what's your feelings that you've been studying the copyright situation on the DMCA as part of the broader stream of intellectual property? Because Jim's going to be doing a intellectual property related stream on his other YouTube channel.
So I have to dig into it again because there's new rules that are being proposed right now in Congress. But from my...
Well, no, they're actually being proposed by a regulatory agency.
All right, but there was based on conversations that Congress was having in 2015.
Right.
So, from what I've looked into the DMCA over the last few years, because I covered a story about a particular ANCAP YouTuber, very popular ANCAP YouTuber, who was filing a false DMCA against one of his critics. So the DMCA is actually a good thing. Because without it, I mean, if we're going to have in a world without intellectual property, I know you're for intellectual property. I am not. But if we're going to live in a world with intellectual property, as something like the DMCA existing is a good thing. Because before that, if you hosted a web or like a message board or a BBS, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I uploaded a short story that was copyrighted. Like, let's say I uploaded a Shel Silverstein poem, like that reference. That's copyrighted material. And back in those days, I'm not really the guy that's going to get in trouble for doing that. You, being the person who owns that space, would be responsible for the content that was uploaded. So what the DMCA did, as well as some other legislation that also provided safe harbor provisions as well, provided a safe harbor for online service providers, OSPs, which said that, hey, if you run a website where people can upload content, you are not responsible for the things that people upload on your server, so long as you follow a DMCA notice. And you have to follow this DMCA notice even if you know that the claim is crap. So let's say I make a video critical of someone, right? And I don't use any of their content. I don't quote them. I don't use clips. I don't use pictures, nothing. And I'm just saying, like, here's what I interpreted that they said. I disagree with it for this reasons. And someone files a DMCA and you're looking at it like, no. You didn't use any of your stuff. Doesn't matter. You have to comply with it. It has to be 100% compliance. Now, there's like a stipulations on how, what to do afterwards, with counter notices and that sort of thing. But that's the law. So what company is doing this?
Well, this is a game studio, Naughty Dog, which is doing it in conjunction with Sony.
All right, so let's say Naughty Dog or Sony, because they're the parent company, I guess, or the publisher in that matter.
They're the publisher.
Right. They can file a DMCA for me just saying... they can actually DMCA me for content that they own, even though I may be talking about something completely different, about something that's not even related to them. For instance, we could just upload a movie review for something like Rock and Roll Nightmare, which Sony has no control over, Dirty Dog has no control over whatsoever, but they can file a DMCA. YouTube can read the DMCA and go, this is crap, but by law, they would have to comply. And if they don't, they lose their safe harbor status. So therefore, like, from then on, if they go in defiance of the DMCA claim, they would be responsible for everything that everyone uploads to their site. So they have to follow this rule. So so they did this on YouTube or on Twitter. So yeah, Twitter.
They've done this on both, actually.
Okay, so Twitter and YouTube. They have to comply with these things, and I'm pretty sure that YouTube and Twitter are probably looking at this going, "This isn't legitimate, but we have to take action because."
Well, Twitter recently rolled out a new feature which Naughty Dog and Sony are using to post about this game, but not allowing comments. Which then, in turn, people are just retweeting it to create the new ratio.
Right.
So yeah, so this is some of the future of gaming we're having to deal with here today. And we actually... the last news story we have is a good one. So do you remember Dragon's Lair, the old video game from the 80s?
I don't, but my wallet does.
Your wallet does?
Yes, my wallet does.
Because
or at least my pockets did when they were full of quarters and they were quickly emptied.
Yes. So Dragon's Lair was also briefly a cartoon series. And Netflix is going to make a Dragon Slayer movie starring Ryan Reynolds.
By the way, I remember that there was a fundraiser, I don't know if it was successful or not, to get Don Bluth to make a animated movie.
Yes.
Did that ever come to light? Or?
It was very close, but it all came down to the fact that Don didn't actually have the rights, and the company that had the rights were like going, and we're going to do this with a famous celebrity who wants to do it.
Oh.
Dragon's Lair is coming to Netflix as a live-action movie starring Deadpool star Ryan Reynolds. Reynolds is also producer on the project, which doesn't have a release date as of this time because of delicious Negra Modelo. The movie will be based on the 80s video game from Don Bluth and Cinematronics. Bluth will also produce because he does have certain rights towards the intellectual property, so they have to make him a producer. Even if he just sits there and they say, yeah, hey, Don, this is what you drew, right? Okay. This is all according to a new report from the Hollywood Reporter. Netflix has been trying to get the rights to the game for over a year now. Turns out the scene from Stranger Things 3 was a teaser of sorts. Dragon's Lair was one of those games that you play as a kid and never forget. It's not a very good game, since it's mostly just a series of quick-time events as you trial and error your way through each scene, but it looked like you were playing an actual cartoon. No other game looked as good. It was really looked like you're playing a game version of Disney's The Sword in the Stone. In the game, you play as Dick the Daring, a brave knight.
Except Don Bluth's animation looked a whole lot better than Disney at the time. But
yes,
at that time.
And actually, this looks better than a lot of Disney animation still today. Yeah. On a quest to rescue Princess Daphne, the damsel in distress, I could definitely see Reynolds in the role of Dirk, while Daring is a rather goofy hero. Dragon's Lair can be completed in just 12 minutes if you don't make any mistakes. How long did it take you to complete the whole game, Jim?
I didn't have enough money. Never had enough money.
It was released originally on Laserdisc and arcade cabinets. Previously, the game was adapted into an animated TV series. Fantasy writer Alan Dean Foster attempted to make a film in the 80s, but the project fizzled out. Foster was the ghostwriter of the original novelization of Star Wars, though the novel was credited to George Lucas. Bluth, who has produced and directed countless animated films over the years, including The Secret of Nim, All Dogs Go to Heaven, and An American Tail, partnered with longtime collaborator Gary Goldman on a Kickstarter for an animated Dragon's Lair film back in 2015. The goal was to raise $250,000 to produce a teaser for the movie, but the Kickstarter didn't raise the necessary funds.
There we go.
They moved the project to Indiegogo, where it eventually earned twice the amount. Now, Netflix, after a year of negotiations, will produce and release the movie as live action rather than animated. That's exciting, of course, but I have to admit I'm a little sad that we won't get an animated version instead. Then again, I was initially worried about
we already got an animated version at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's called Dragon's Lair, the video game.
Yeah. The article writer then finishes, then again, I was initially worried about a live-action Witcher, and it turned out better than I could have possibly imagined.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you remember another game that was similar to this called Hologram Time Traveler.
Yes.
Yes, it was the hologram was the type of game that it was, because it was a hologram game. Like, it had a little TV with a mirror, and it made it look like these people were standing up, and you had to do all these little quick decisions, and if you missed or didn't do it fast enough, you would die, and then you had to put in another 50 cents. And it was really hard. And I remember when I was a kid going to Disneyland and playing games like this, and then, getting a $20 bill from my dad, and you're like, just spend it wisely, don't spend it all on one game. And then 15 minutes after being on front of the hologram thing, I was already out of quarters. $20 was a lot of arcade time just flushed down the drain, just because I wanted to see a cool hologram.
Yep, and that was back when it was just 1 quarter. Although that one was a game, if I remember, was like
50 cents. Yeah, it was like 50 cents.
Right. Yeah. So we forgot to set something up for the show today, so we don't have a music review.
Yeah.
But that's okay, because we're experimental here on the show, and we're going to talk about a TV show that I watched called The New Pope. So there was a show that used to be on. I don't remember if it was on when we first started doing the show, called The Young Pope. Starred Jude Law as a man in his late 40s, early 50s who was the Pope. And he was kind of a radical Pope. He also may or may not have been a saint. And then he had a massive cardiovascular incident at the end of the series, and it was implied that he died. So this is the follow-up series where he didn't die, he just had a coma. And they gave him a heart transplant that didn't seem to take. And so they go through a series of shenanigans with different popes until they eventually elect John Malkovich's character as Pope after a Pope attempts
Malkovich.
They elect him Pope after they elected a prior Pope who basically wanted to give all the Vatican's money to the poor. And then he suddenly died for unknown reasons, which may or may not have been God killing him. And in the background of the show, there's a Muslim terrorist who's just like a beating metronome. The show ends on a terrorist incident, and there is a twist. And I'm going to say there is a twist because I want to recommend you watch this show. The interesting thing about John Malkovich's character is he was a punk rock kid who ended up becoming a Catholic priest and later pope. And so there's a beautiful sequence of where he takes punk rock musical themes and makes it into a papal sermon. And it was very interesting and fascinating. And both this and the show it came from take a lot of musical themes and a lot of musical aesthetics and really flesh out the themes and symbolism of the show based around them. And yes, Tally saw the Young Pope is very good because it's all based around Jude Law being an excellent actor, and he's an excellent actor for this show as well. So next up, I believe we could be talking about
Whiskey.
the Angel Share.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the Angel Share.
So everybody's drinking really hard during the pandemic because there's nothing else to do. So I thought I'd give people some kind of clarity on what they're drinking. And this week we're doing whiskey. Next week we're going to do beer. So we did wine last week. So we watched 2 whiskey-related movies. One was less whiskey-related than I anticipated, but this one was very whiskey-related. It's called The Angel Share. It is a Scottish film. It's filmed in Scotland with actual Scottish people. It's about a kid who's kind of, sort of troubled, keeps having run-ins with the law, a little impulsive. But he's trying to try to turn around his life because his girlfriend was pregnant with this kid and later gave birth to his new son, and he wants to kind of turn his life around. But the problem is he has a scar on his cheek. And in Scotland, if you got scars, that's kind of looked down upon because that means like you're a hooligan. So he finds it very hard to find work. He ends up getting in trouble after attacking I guess a local gang or something. And they let him off with community service, and then the gang is kind of upset that he got off light. And his community service organizer guy kind of takes him under his wing and shows him, Scotch whiskey, and he ends up becoming a big fan of it after some minor hesitations at first. And he becomes really interested in it and starts kind of pursuing it as a hobby. And along the way, he starts kind of getting in deep with kind of the whiskey, clubs and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. He finds out that there is this cask that's been found at a distillery. That was a gift, a gift from one distillery to another, over a marriage between the 2 distilleries. I guess a son or daughter married the son or daughter of another distillery owner, and as a wedding gift, they gave this distillery a cask, and this was in the 1960s. And that distillery was Malt Mill, which was a very well-respected, now very sought-after brand of whiskey. Now they're defunct, and all these old bottles are worth top dollar. Because, and also now that distillery, didn't mention this in the movie, but that distillery actually was kind of eaten up by a really good distillery in Islay called Lagavulin. This is about an Islay whiskey, which I'm happy about because I fucking love Islay whiskey. It's my favorite region of Scottish whiskey. But anyways,
delicious salty whiskey.
Yeah, so this is a cask that has been sitting around since 1960. It's been aged, until 2012. So you can imagine it's worth a pretty penny. And so it has to go up on auction, and they have this little kind of heist that they're going to do where they're going to steal some whiskey. In order to kind of make enough money so that they can get their life straight, move far away from this gang, so that him and his girl can live away from all the shenanigans that they caused, or he caused rather. And he meets up with a couple other people in his community service to kind of go along with them and pull off this heist. It's actually really good. I think the only real problem with it is because these kids are from Glasgow. They have a really thick Scottish accent. So if you can imagine, watching people who talk like K-Mac for an hour and a half, it gets kind of hard to understand. I had to watch it with subtitles, but it was very good. I highly recommend this, and it's also kind of neat to kind of see like actual whiskey the Scottish whiskey culture kind of represented, rather than kind of oh yeah, we like beer, oh hoppy, how like a lot of movies they don't really care about the topic that they're talking about, and they just kind of throw some words around to try to blindside.
These words sound like things people would say.
Right. They actually did know what they were talking about, and then in fact, when they were drinking the Isla from the cask, they were going like, "Oh, it's really smoky." It's like, well, yeah, like it's an Isla. So I mean, like they actually did not, but you get the idea. So if you actually understand what's going on in this world, you kind of know that they got everything right. But at the same time, it wasn't kind of condescending or talking down to people who don't know, because it kind of explains, it kind of walks you through all this stuff. And the other stuff you don't really need to know. It just kind of, it's almost kind of there as like an Easter egg for people who do. Highly recommend this movie. This movie is really good. Watch it with subtitles if you're not from Glasgow, because you're not going to understand every other word that's going to come out of everyone's mouth. Everyone did a pretty good performance in it, as far as I can tell. Subtitles. I'm only halfway in it. But it was kind of compelling. I was actually really surprised that it wasn't the kind of typical fare that you get a lot of with alcohol movies, where the alcohol kind of content is kind of axillary to what's going on in the main plot, whereas this is very much entwined. Like the whole Scotch whiskey culture was part of the plot itself, which, unlike our next movie, that wasn't the case. That was not the case.
The Japanese whiskey wasn't the central part of that movie.
Right.
It's a movie you might have heard of called Lost in Translation.
Yeah.
It's all about a very young, I'm actually shocked at how young she was. What's her face who plays Black Widow in the movies? Scarlett Johansson. Looked extremely attractive for her, beyond what she looks now. Now she now looks like an attractive woman that's above my weight class and in my age bracket. But back then she was like, man, I really wish I could be young and good enough to get with a girl like that. But of course, I wasn't a famous actor going through depression and divorce in Japan, played by Bill Murray. And that was really what the movie was about. It's about two people who are going through a troublesome change in their life. One starting a marriage, one maybe ending his marriage. And just trying to deal with it while they're in Japan and nobody understands them. I mean, that's the whole movie in a nutshell. Yeah. I mean, what did you think about the movie?
Yeah, it was very much I always forget what this is. It's character.
It's a character study.
Yeah, it's definitely two character studies in one. I thought there was going to be a lot more stuff about whiskey in it, because this was one of the movies that was highly recommended. If you're interested in whiskey and you want to watch movies about whiskey, check this out. That was really kind of like a B plot, or kind of like a MacGuffin almost, just try to push in like a story between these two characters, which had nothing to do with whiskey outside of the fact that he was there because of whiskey. I also heard a lot of people talk about this movie that they were like, "Oh, I can't believe that they, made up this Japanese whiskey just for the movie," and then later finding out, oh no, Centauri is actually a very well respected brand of Japanese whiskey, so much so that they ended up either merging or buying out Jim Beam, which is now known as Centauri Beam. And he's drinking Hibiki 17, which I think they're actually in talks of getting rid of because of the high amounts of interest that Japanese whiskey has gotten over the years, partially due to this movie. But yeah. I definitely recommend this movie, but not as like you're interested in whiskey and you want to learn more about whiskey. You're just gonna know that there is a brand of whiskey called Centauri 17. And that's about it. And Bill Murray wants you to know that it's Centauri time, and that's about it. But other than that, it's a good character study, and it's kind of interesting where these characters kind of go, and where they kind of drive themselves, and kind of where their life problems kind of have them intersect at the same time, the same place. It's kind of, kind of bizarre coincidences that kind of unplay into a bigger narrative that's really good, but not about whiskey. Rather unfortunate on that aspect, but it was a good movie. I'm not gonna dock it points, but
yeah,
for this kind of conversation, because we're talking about alcohol, this was kind of a downer in that respect. But I'm glad I watched it. Highly recommend it.
Yep. And Jim asked me, "Do I want to put subtitles on this?" And I go, "No, you don't."
Yeah. I ended up watching that scene because there's a scene. I don't want to get into spoilers where they're talking in Japanese and there's a big kind of like joke that's happening in the big process of it. And then if I had watched it with subtitles, it probably would have been a letdown. But I ended up going later on and listening to what they said. And it was kind of interesting because she wasn't wrong.
She was not wrong.
She was not wrong. Even though it sounds like she was wrong.
But yeah, so next up on our cavalcade of movies is a little movie that you might have seen on The Best of the Worst called Rock and Roll Nightmare. I'm calling it audible on our original planned order. Flip that around a little bit because I want to do Rock and Roll Nightmare because that was a special movie that also involves booze.
Mm-hmm.
So this was certainly a movie that people made.
Someone actually made this movie. I was really surprised that this exists. And you could watch it. And there's a beginning and a middle and an end. There's definitely an end.
I mean, there's definitely an end.
I don't know about the first two parts. That's debatable. But it definitely had an end.
Things sure happened in the first two parts of the movie.
Which are completely inconsequential.
So
everything in the first two parts of the movie is completely inconsequential.
So that guy you see there on the front of the cover, he had a heavy metal band in the 70s and 80s that toured in Europe even in the 90s and early 2000s. He was a professional powerlifter, and he decided to make a low-budget movie with his sort of fantasy heavy metal character as the star. Now, wouldn't it have been great if you knew that when you started watching the movie? Yes. Wasn't it incredibly confusing to have literally all the backstory explained to you in the last, 20 minutes of the movie? Yes. So how did this movie work as a horror film for you, Jim?
I don't like your choice of word. Work? It's a movie, and we watched it. I guess it worked in that respect.
Did any of the horror sequences function good as a horror movie?
Oh, this is a horror movie?
Well, yeah, people got murdered in it. I mean, let me rephrase that. You think people got murdered in it until the end of the movie.
I thought it was a comedy.
It was certain. We did laugh a whole lot.
I thought it was a comedy, and then that evolved into a music video, and then evolved back into a comedy movie, and then it turned into a comedy music video. I thought that's what this was.
Yeah. That's also a good assessment.
Okay.
And there's a sequel to this movie.
It exists?
It exists,
and we can watch it.
Yes, we might have trouble finding it, but we will definitely watch it.
That's a threat. Oh.
Well, it's not a threat. It's a promise. We will definitely watch it.
I'm not very good with threats. Oh, that's the joke for the next movie. Sorry. Go ahead.
That was actually in The New Pope, too. They had a character who said, only mobsters threaten people. I'm a man with power. I do what I say I'm going to do. So, next up on our cavalcade of movies is Guns Akimbo.
No.
Oh, no, you moved that one down?
No, you didn't give it to me at all.
It's on the list. It's immediately under Angel Share on the original list.
You didn't give me a working link for any of these things, so... Actually, no, you didn't.
No, it's there. It's immediately under Angel Share.
Oh, I see it.
So you remember seeing the guy from The Hobbit with guns all over the internet?
Mm-hmm.
That was a thing that happened? Well, it turns out they actually made a movie about that.
Yeah, Dapperton saw it. He
So
really liked it.
I enjoyed the movie as well. It had an interesting concept, but there were a lot of things that held the concept of the movie back. So basically, it's Battle Royale, but in a major American city and not on an isolated island. And instead of children, being random people with an underground cell phone app. And they go around murdering each other. So the titular character here is a counter troll. This is the movie's attempt to make you find him sympathetic, that he trolls bad people on the internet. Until he unfortunately trolls the people responsible for this horrible murder game. And then he gets guns surgically grafted to his hands. And a psycho lady is set to kill him. And they spend an entire day running through a city, and he has to learn how to get dressed by asking a homeless person to dress him, and going around and having gunslinging adventures. And there's conspiracies and all sorts of stuff like that. It's generally fun, but they didn't really give me a good reason to care about the protagonist, other than the fact that he's Harry Potter. And he had a girlfriend that was kind of cute. That was basically it. And the girlfriend dumped him because it's realistic that after you watch your boyfriend brutally murder a whole bunch of people with guns, that you're not interested in them anymore. So I would definitely recommend you watch this movie, but you have to understand that this is a movie where the concept is good, the execution isn't good, but it's not to the point where the execution is so bad it distracts you from the quality of the film. So next up is a great movie by a great legendary British writer by the name of Douglas Adams.
I really enjoyed this movie. I really did.
What did you enjoy about it?
A lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what? It'd be better is if we had the opportunity to watch the original TV movies from the BBC.
There was a first one?
And they actually do the second book of the series in the BBC thing, too.
Yeah. Oh, I think they go on for a couple books, actually.
I don't remember what they did after the restaurant at the end of the universe. So, Jim, why don't you talk about your connection to the show and the movies?
So I grew up and my dad liked weird, kind of obscure things like Dark Star, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, Doctor Who, that sort of thing. Even though he never really watched a lot of Doctor Who, I think that was mostly because he didn't have access to the stuff of Doctor Who. I remember this was in the 80s before we had the public library. Wink, wink. So in order for you to get stuff, you would actually have to go to something called, what was it? The library?
The actual library?
The actual public library? Or this thing called Block Booster.
Hey, they still have like two of those.
No, just one now. Just only one now. In order to find these sorts of things, and a lot of the times they didn't have stuff like Doctor Who. But you know what they always had? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So that's kind of, I remember watching it when I was a kid a couple times, going like, this is kind of goofy and weird, and I like it. Never really paid too much mind to it, however, until this movie came out, and I was like, oh, I remember that. Let's go see it. And I went with my girlfriend at the time. This was in 2003. This movie came out. And we watched it, and it kind of revitalized my interest in it. And I went and bought the ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide book that has all of the books, including the Zaphod Beeblebrox story and all that stuff. And I fell in love with it again, but really did fall in love with it again. This movie, it's. I think I agree with Max Landis, not with rape. But with Douglas Adams, is that it's impossible.
It's like a piece of pork, and you can't cut the fat out of it because the fat's what gives it all the flavor.
Right. And in order for you to make a movie, you have to cut the fat out. And they tried to cut the fat out, but at the same time tried to keep a lot of the marbling in there as well. And I think they were really kind of walking a fine line with this, and they did what they could. And I know a lot of people who are like diehard at Douglas Adams fans, a lot of them don't like this movie because a lot of the fat was cut out. I do appreciate it for what it was trying to do. It was trying to do that balancing act where it was trying to cut the fat that it has to do to appease movie studios.
And this wasn't at the point when there was like a Marvel studio model to say, no, you could do something that appeases the fans for the most part with only minor things that you have to do to ring stuff in. There wasn't really a good model.
Yeah. Now I think they could do this. I know that they were planning on doing the whole book series, but this is also a very different take as well. There's lots of differences with this in the original story of the. They kind of try to do its own thing at the same time as well, but while trying to keep in a lot of the stuff. So it still had like the monologue with the bowl of petunias and the whale falling to earth and what the whale was thinking, and it was completely unnecessary in respects of the film, but they kept it in there just because they knew that they couldn't just gloss over something like that. They had to include it. So there was still things in that they kept in, and then there was other parts that they had to brush over or kind of get rid of the giant squid, so to speak. But I think, that kind of balancing act that they did was pretty good. And try to keep it within like a 3-act structure as well. So yeah, like so in that respect, I do appreciate this. I think that if someone was just if I were to pitch someone like, hey, you should be interested in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and they're not familiar with any of that stuff, they're not really big readers, I would definitely recommend them to watch this. And then if they enjoy it, they're going to be like, well, I want to know more what's going on in the story, because it kind of leaves you off with there's still more to the story. You can introduce them to the books or to the audiobooks, the BBC radio programs, and even the TV show. There's many different mediums you can get this story from that are all good. They're all great. Even the one with Stephen Moore is great, which I think is the worst of the bunch, but it's still fantastic. And we still get all the stuff like 42 and Marvin the Martian, even though a lot of the Marvin the Martian stuff is kind of cut out, which is unfortunate because.
But it was played by Alan Rickman.
Yeah. And Warwick Davis actually does the suit animations. He's actually in that suit. And John Malkovich is in it. We just did a movie about John Malkovich. That was the thing.
Yes, we did. John Malkovich was also excellent in that movie. So, finally, we're going to talk about another movie that was pretty good as an idea. The execution wasn't as good. Jim and I have slightly different opinions on it.
Oh, I don't think anything was good about this.
Let's talk a little bit about Scoob. So, how deep do you go in with the Scooby-Doo movies?
I love Scooby-Doo. Even when I was a kid, even today, I still love Scooby-Doo. I still have my Scooby-Doo stuffed Scooby-Doo from when I was a kid. I still have it. I love Scooby-Doo. I was not a big fan of the early 2000s movies, even though I thought Matthew Lillard, is that his name? Did a great job as Shaggy, and so good, in fact, that he actually does the voice work for it now. It's not like Casey Kasem can do it anymore.
That makes me sad.
Yeah. But he kind of took up the torch and picked up the torch and ran with it. Unfortunately, guess who is not voicing this movie?
Who's not voicing this movie?
Matthew Lillard is not voicing Shaggy in this movie. And it shows, because Shaggy's voice is terrible. I did a Shaggy impersonation in a Discord server because we were all just kind of chatting, and this movie got brought up. And when I heard him talk for the first time, I was like, that's terrible. And I did a Scooby impersonation, and someone was like, your Scooby isn't perfect, but it's a whole lot better than what I just heard in that trailer. And it doesn't get much gooder. in the movie,
Gooder.
unfortunately. The only one that remained to be faithful was Scooby, but that's because they actually still had the original voice actor for him.
So here's the question I have. What do you think about the attempt to make a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe built into the background of this movie?
I was okay with that.
Like, do you think that's a good idea going forward? Because I think that's
No.
a really,
Because this is not good. And what they're doing with it is not good. I like the idea of having a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. I'm fine with that. But the execution is awful. I mean, just bad. It made no sense. This movie makes no sense.
So, when Dick Dastardly, you have him, you have Muttley. The black girl from Wacky Racers was the pilot for Blue Falcon's ship.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah, because they kind of said, well, Big Afro was not something that kids today would relate to. And the blonde police officer lady was also a character from Wacky Racers.
Yeah. And I would have not have known that unless someone pointed that out to me.
Yeah. And there was all sorts of little interesting elements to that. But yeah, that's what I thought. This movie has some potential, but the execution's where the problem is. When you get to the nuts and bolts of the story, Scooby-Doo movies generally tend to have a terrible story.
Yeah.
And the story basically is, oh, hey, there's a mystery and some things happening and the gang is having some problems. And those problems lead to social consequences that kids today can relate to because they have those problems with their friends too.
Mm-hmm. But it's really kind of overshadowed by a lot of weird decisions and terrible decisions. I think the redeeming things that I thought were good about this is the cameos by Captain Caveman and who else? Dick Dastardly, or I guess he's not a cameo. Kind of these callbacks to kind of interesting characters from the Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe now. But I don't think it was utilized properly. Yeah. And another thing, but the big thing that was irking me the entire time was just, okay, so you have the mystery machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have these characters who are still very much dressed like they're straight out of the 70s. Their van looks like it's straight out of the 70s.
Except for Fred.
No, Fred still looks like he's out of the 70s. I think they all look like they're straight out of the 70s. But the movie opens up with Shaggy being a young kid on his hot new iPhone, and then they're adults now. So when does this movie take place?
Now.
But it was now when they were kids, though.
Right, but it's now.
So why are they dressed like they're from the 70s, and why are they driving around a hippie mobile?
Because they're hipsters.
But hipsters don't drive that. Hipsters take Uber.
Well, they're hipsters who have a van. There's actually a whole community of hipsters who like to live in vans now.
Oh, yeah, I think it's called Vanu. I have a couple of podcast co-hosts that are Vanus. Either way, it doesn't make any sense. This movie makes you go like, wait a minute, when does this take place exactly? Do we always have cell phones in this cinematic universe? Are we going to get Wacky Racers, a prequel?
Also, they didn't have red herring.
Flying cars.
They should have put a red herring reference in there for when they were kids.
Yeah. We did get some callbacks, like I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids.
Yeah.
But other than that...
Also, I wanted a 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo callback in there.
Yeah.
Because that was the Scooby-Doo series I actually watched a whole bunch of.
No Shaggy Doo.
Yeah. You mean Scrappy-Doo?
Or Scrappy-Doo. That's probably a good thing though. Kind of now that I think about it. Are we gonna get a Flintstones out of this?
I mean, the Flintstones have crossed over with Captain Caveman before.
And they have crossed over with the Jetsons before.
And they also have Jabberjaw featured. And I think Jabberjaw crossed over with the Jetsons at one point.
Are we gonna get a Snaggletooth movie? That's the only thing I care about. If we're gonna get a Snaggletooth movie, I'm fucking all in.
What about Top
Exit
Cat?
stage left even. Top Cat.
Yeah, but he's not. But Snagglepuss isn't gay enough for today.
Are we gonna get a Huckleberry Hound?
Well, obviously, because he's gay with Snagglepuss. They live together.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this movie. I don't recommend it. If you got kids, I mean, it's harmless. They'll probably.
I think
like
it was a good idea. Execution was poor. I enjoyed it because they were trying some new and interesting ideas. I would have enjoyed it more if Blue Falcon wasn't a man baby who didn't know how to do anything. It's like, what's the point of having Blue Falcon there if he's not, Blue Falcon? What was the point of that? You could have still had him, like getting that whole jealousy thing with Shaggy and Scooby. Could have still done that whole triangle. So that is our show for today, everybody.
Yeah.
Join us next week where we're going to watch some movies and hopefully we'll get the announcement of the return of movies soon.
Yeah.
Also next week, I will be reviewing the HBO Max service.
And I'll be reviewing movies about beer.
Beer.
While drinking delicious, delicious Negra Modelo. Remember,
will that be a beer?
Next time your Mexican eatery opens up and you want a beer, just tell your waitress, Negra, please.
All right.
All right. Hail worms.